Imagine, if you will, a mystical world full of swords and sorcery, fantastic creatures, and more buxom babes than you can ogle at. The downside is you have to serve some whiny bitch who treats you like the dog crap at the bottom of your shoe. Such is the case of Saito Hiraga, the familiar of Zero. The Familiar of Zero started out as a series of light novels written by Noboru Yamaguchi and illustrated by Eiji Usatsuka in 2004. Since then, it has expanded to other forms of media, from a manga published by Media Factory and 3 12-episode anime shows by JC Staff. The story is about a young mage named Louise and the adventure she has with her familiar, a young Earth boy named Saito. So let's take a look at the Familiar of Zero, shall we? So our story begins at the Tristane Academy of Magic, obviously a more prestigious school than Hogwarts. We zoom in to see Louise, who wakes up to get ready for school. In class, she offers to try her hand at alchemy at the teacher's request, which causes an uproar from the other students. Duck and cover, people!
Rao, In, Yan.
What the fuck?
So as the dust settles and Louise is called to the principal's office, Louise's classmates criticize her zero success rate with magic. She responds by saying she is confident in the summoning ritual on the next day.
Just you watch. I'll conjure up a familiar that's divine and beautiful and powerful, and it'll be better than anything any of you can cook up, and then we'll see who's laughing!
Jeez, what's up her butt?
Why do I get the feeling that this is going to end poorly? The next day, all of the students gather around to summon their familiars. However, things suddenly get quiet when Louise comes up to the plate. Pikachu! I choose you! Unfortunately for her, she summons, Who's
that Pokemon? It's a human?
Look how he's dressed. He looks like a peasant.
Yeah, a peasant. There's no doubt about it.
So Louise objects about having a peasant as a familiar, but is stuck with him due to the summoning ritual being sacred or something like that. Oh boy, this is going to be awkward. So she takes him up to her room and performs a spell on him, which would allow him to understand what she is saying, and explains to Saito what happened. He takes it rather well, in which he runs off panicking, thinking it's a dream. The magic ice cream truck is driving by. If I hurry, I could catch him. Louise enlists the help from one of her fellow students, who catches him using his magic. It is here that Saito realizes he is in a completely different world and seeks to find a way to return home, as well as fulfill his obligation as Louise's familiar. Louise Francois LeBlanc de la Valliere is a young mage and a sophomore at the Tristane Academy of Magic. However, she is not very confident in her magic and is often scorned by her fellow classmates because every spell she casts fails with explosive results. So she is nicknamed Louise the Zero after her 0 success rate and 0 attributes. She initially treats Saito like an animal, but later begins to warm up to him despite denying having any feelings for him.
We love Saito. We love him so much. No, we hate Saito. We hate him, hate him, hate him.
Haven't I done that joke before? She also easily gets jealous over Saito's other romantic interests, especially a young maid named Siesta and... yeah. Do you see him hitting on the queen? Saito Hiraga is a boy from Japan who was summoned by Louise to be her familiar. His attitude is generally carefree, yet he blows up easily when anyone he cares for is in danger, particularly Louise. Though he at first wishes to return home, he adapts to his strange new situation relatively quickly. Although he is brave and occasionally rash, he is also a bit of a player as he has many romantic entanglements throughout the show's run. Finally, a boy who actually deserves the interest of multiple girls. Then there's Kirke. Whew. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Better open a window. Meet Kirke, a fire mage with an equally hot superstructure. This voluptuous young mage knows it and uses her feminine charm to her advantage against her opponents or to gather intelligence from weak-minded male characters. Let's see Harry Potter tap that hot ass. The problem with her is that she doesn't seem to know what the word no means, as it is implied that she has dated and probably slept with multiple boys at the academy, as well as constantly trying to seduce Saito on multiple occasions, which usually causes him to get punished by Louise. In short, she's a slut. And probably a walking STD encyclopedia.
Just one little kiss. I've had all my shots.
Louise and Kirke seem to have a long-standing bitter rivalry with each other, but gain some form of mutual respect for each other as the show progresses. Kirke has a best friend named Tabitha. Not much about her is known since she is a very quiet person, a la Yuki Nagato from The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. She does not allow any emotion to show on her face, says little about herself, and often does not respond to questions or gives short, incomplete answers. Well, I guess that's one thing that differentiates this character from Yuki Nagato. After all, she doesn't constantly talk and technobabble all the time. She specializes in air and wind magic and uses a long curved staff in place of a wand. There is a decent amount of implied nudity and crude humor in this show, but it is mostly played for laughs in the form of situation comedy. Although I feel some of it may be a little out of place or excessive. There are, however, a couple of characters that are rather perverted, such as Kirke or the school's headman. Dumbledore?! Holy crap, it is! It's a perverted version of Dumbledore from the Harry Potter books.
My apologies to Harry Potter fans everywhere. However, to be fair, he also does look a lot like a perverted Gandalf as well.
So for nudity, I will give 2 stars for quantity and 3 stars for intensity, while crude humor gets 3 stars in both categories. Minor profanities are used occasionally, and violence mostly consists of the use of magic and is most of the time entirely bloodless. Although in one scene a minor character is killed off for dramatic effect. Thus, I will give profanity 1 star for each category, and for violence 3 stars for quantity and 2 stars for intensity. While The Familiar of Zero is a well-paced and very funny magical adventure anime, it does have its setbacks. My main problem with this show is that it wasn't completely released in the US, as there exists 2 other seasons, each comprising of 12 episodes. The Familiar of Zero, The Rider of the Twin Moons, and The Familiar of Zero, Princess's Rondo. In short, we are currently only getting 1/3 of a greater overall story within the span of 37 episodes. And I guess there is a reason why we never got the other 26 episodes dubbed in English. Like my earlier review of Karin, The Familiar of Zero was one of the last anime shows to be dubbed by Geneon USA before the division was shut down in 2007. However, a couple of years later, Universal Studios would buy the company in 2009 and operate it under the name Geneon Universal Entertainment Japan.
Hands up if anybody wants a Jurassic Park anime anthology a la Animatrix.
As such, I think it would be nice for them to give us some closure and finish dubbing the other 2 seasons, as well as tie up some unanswered questions left from this first installment. The show has a very nice balance between action and humor. The humor has hints of harem comedy cliches, although it mostly avoids being sucked into becoming one thanks to a well thought out story. On the flip side, the action does get kind of predictable at times, but not too much to ruin the experience or become boring and cumbersome. The overall pace of the story, although evenly paced most of the time, gets kind of slow at times, which gives the main characters more time to develop. Although these slow parts are usually accompanied by bits of mild fan service humor to avoid getting stale. At the same time, I feel that the last 3 episodes or so were a little bit overrushed in order to fit the story into 13 episodes. Other than that, I will give story 4 out of 5 stars. There is not much I can say about the show's soundtrack. It has a range to having a nice regal feel to getting very cutesy and helps convey the mood of the series. Though the opening and closing songs sound like standard anime tracks, it gets the job done in introducing us to the show, and the voice acting in both English and Japanese range from average to above average in terms of quality. Thus, I will give soundtrack 4 out of 5 stars. The animation is, for the most part, very bright and colorful. The character designs, although simplistic at times, are very cute and adorable, which fit the show's comedic theme nicely. Thus, I will give animation 4 out of 5 stars. The show's characters and their reactions with each other are where the show truly shines, specifically that of Saito and Louise. The relationship between Louise and Saito is pretty much defined from the start. She is a noble and he is a commoner and a familiar, a lowly servant without any real rights in Louise's eyes. This initially causes a rift between the mage and her familiar, but as the show progresses, they begin to have emotions for each other as they go on adventure after adventure. The secondary characters in the show are fairly cliché, but their characters are fairly equally explored in the show, although they do seem to fail to develop in any significant fashion, specifically the show's villains who only appear during the last couple episodes or so. It's like they just want to usurp the kingdom of Tristane because it's there, and no specific reason is given why the villains are who they are and what is behind their motivations. The secondary characters are usually used to move the story along or get the main characters out of trouble. Of course, there are the second and third seasons of the show in which those answers may be revealed, but for now, these unanswered questions tend to irk me. Thus, I will give characters 3 stars. I think this anime is a lot of fun. However, I wish that the other 2 seasons will eventually be released in the US in order to answer many of the questions left unanswered in this first installment. It has a nice balance of action and comedy and lovable characters, although some of them need to be fleshed out more, and that's yet another problem that could be solved if the other 2 seasons were released stateside. Thus, I will give The Familiar of Zero 3 points for interest and an overall rating of 7 out of 10.
Well, anyway, I think it's time to... Okay, it looks like I have a little intrusion that I need to sort out. This is the American Anime Otaku, signing out.
In a spin, love is a spin I'm in, under the old